this video, we're going to be going over the De Bello Gallico, Book 5, chapters 24 and maybe 25. Caesar in Gaul during the winter time. So, Ablative Absolute is what we start out with the ships having been ported or docked. Remember, subduco, ducere, duxi ductus with a sub on the front, in the context of sailing, is going to mean to dock, is to dock your ship. So with the ships having been docked, and with a council, and remember a council is a concilium. A concilium is an actual plan. So this is a council. And with the Council of Gauls having been conducted, having been brought about, having been held at Samarobrava, that is a locative case, because, and that's the quote that is here, eo anno, in that year. Remember the essay, when it modifies something, is going to be the equivalency of a hic haec hoc or leia la lud. So because in that year the grain supply, had come forth more narrow, angustius, in Gaul on account of dryness, drought, siccitates, coactus est. Cogere coegi coactus. He was compelled, meaning Caesar, to locate the army in the winter camps aliter, differently than, because of ferment on it, than previous years, and to distribute the legions, accusative plural, into more citizenry. So usually they keep the armies and the winter camps localized and centralized. This year, because one tribe, one localization could not support all of them due to the fact they don't have enough food because of drought, he's going to have to spread them out. Out of which, meaning obviously out of all of these legions, he gave do dari dididatus one about to be led into the Moroni, that being the tribe, and he gave it to Gaius Fabius the legate. Another he gave about to be led, ducendam implied again, into the Nervii. He gave that other one to Quintus Cicero. This is the brother of the great orator Marcus Cicero. And a third he gave, about to be led, into the Esibii to Dative, Lucius Roscius. A fourth he ordered, so he ordered a fourth legion to winter, Hiemare, in or among the Remi with Titus Labienus in the border, in the confine of the Treveri. Continuing on, describing his distribution, he located three legions among the Belgians. He made in charge, praeficio praeficere, praefeci, which is what we have here, means to make an accusative in charge of a dative. So in charge of these, he made Marcus Crassus the quaestor, and Lucius Munatius Plancus and Gaius Trebonius the legates in charge. So he made that accusative, and that accusative, and that accusative in charge of the dative them. One legion, which he had drafted, conscripted, most closely proxime across the Po River, one legion and 5 cohorts, he sent, meromittere misi misis, so he sent that one legion in Eburones, into the Eburones, in plus accusative, part of which, the largest Maxima, the greatest part of which, is between the Mosa, the Meuse, and the Rhenus, the Rhine. Qui, who, the Eburones, were sub imperio, under the power of Ambiorix and of Catavolcus. We'll learn about these guys later. Whereas praefecit means to place in charge of, praesum praese means to be in charge of. So he ordered the accusative Quintus Titurius Sabinus and Lucius Aurunculeius Cotta, the legates, that's merely an appositive telling you who those guys are, like the legates were who those guys were, which the quaestor was who that guy was, So he ordered Quintus Sabinus and Cotta the legates to be in charge of these dative soldiers. And so now he is distributing all the various different winter camps in this pattern. And ablative absolute, with the legions having been distributed ad hunc modum to this method in this way, he estimated that he himself, accusative subject, was able, has to be at the same time as that because it's present infinitive, he was able to mediate, to lessen, and this takes a dative, to lessen the grain lack. This is an adjective, meaning related to grain, and this is a lack, a sparseness, a scarcity, most easily. So, to mediate, to make better, the grain sparsity, most easily superlative. And the winter camps, that's your nominative, of all these legions, those winter camps, Hiberna takes as its verb contenebatur. They were contained in 100 thousands of paces, 100 miles, except the one which, quam eam, except the winter camp which he had given, about to be led into the most peaceful and most quiet part, in which he had given to Lucius Roscius, about to be led into the most peaceful and the most quiet part. He himself, meanwhile, ipse, until, quoad requires a subjunctive verb, which is exactly what we have with the pluperfect subjunctive. Meanwhile, until he had learned that the legions had been located and the winter camps had been fortified, add an essay, it makes a perfect passive infinitive. Add an essay, it makes a perfect passive infinitive to that perfect passive participle. So until he had learned that the winter camps had been fortified and the legions had been located, he decided to remain a deponent verb, moror, morari, moratus sum, delay, wait, or stay in Gaul. Normally what he would do is he would head out to Illyria. Continuing on in chapter 25. Erat natus. Natus is of course from Naskor, Naski, Natasum. Tersgatius had been born among the Cornutes in the highest location, meaning his position in life, whose ancestors, literally the greater ones of the ancestors, had held the kingdom in sua civitate, in their own state. So they had been previously the kings. To this guy, Caesar had restored the place of those ancestors on behalf of his virtue, referring to Tesgatius, and on behalf of the benevolence against himself, Caesar. So apparently Caesar's going to establish Tesgatius as a puppet ruler over these peoples because Tesgatius' ancestors had enjoyed that role. Because he had enjoyed utor uti usasum. His singular work, this verb utor takes an ablative object, singulari modifying opera, the singular work of him referring to Tesgatius in all war. So Tesgatius has always been on Caesar's side. Caesar rewards him by establishing him as the ruler. However, they, meaning the people over whom Tesgatius is ruling, killed. Interficio, interficere, interfeci. They killed this guy. Or you could even say they killed him. Regnantem, present active participle, ruling now for the duration of this 3rd year. So ruling for the duration of the 3rd year, in his 3rd year, they killed him. With many people openly, palom is an adverb that means openly, hostile, out of the citizenry, and with them, meaning those people openly, being the authors. This isn't some sort of clandestine conspiracy. It's a popular uprising. That's why he says openly hostile from the citizenry, and with them being the authors. And this situation, when it modifies something is the same of hikakok, is brought down to Caesar. So the fact that his own hand-picked successor, puppet guy, has been killed. So that guy, meaning Caesar, having feared, from the verb, werior, vereri, veritas sum. Having feared, and remember fear clauses, the uts and the nays are reversed, such that the nay introduces the fear clause as positive, whereas an ut introduced by the fear would be the negative. Having feared because it pertained to more. It wasn't a small group of conspirators, but because it was a widespread, again, popular uprising. We saw that previously, in which we saw that here, openly from the state. So again, having feared because it was pertaining to more, openly, popular uprising, having feared that the state of them, being that particular tribe of Tisgatius, would fail. Remember that de plus facio means to fail. De plus sum esse means to lack. That the state, the citizen, would fail by that impulse, by that action. He orders Lucius Plancus to set out proficisco or proficisci, a deponent verb. Looks like a passive infinitive, translates actively. To set out with a legion out of Belgium quickly into the Carnutes, and to winter there. And, so you have, do that action he orders him to do that action, and to send to him, Caesar, these guys having been arrested, these guys, by whose work, by the work of whom he had known that Tisgatius interfected at an essay to make the infinitive had been killed. So he wants him to go keep watch and bring to him the men particularly that are responsible for the assassination of Tisgatius. Meanwhile, in Terium, he certior factus est. Now this is an expression, an idiom, that means to be informed. But you can literally translate it, meanwhile he has been made, he was made more certain. He was informed by all the legates and the quaestors to whom he had handed over the legions. He was informed by those guys that per ventum esse, that it has been come. This is the impersonal passive that is beloved by Caesar and by others of the Latin language, in which they would not say the students came into the room, but they would say, it has been come into the room by the students. Sounds odd to us, but we're English speakers. So, he was made more certain that it has been come, and it's it because it's per ventum. The neuter, not per ventus, he, not where per venta, she. And that the location has been fortified in those winter camps. And then we start on 26th, in which we find something is going to go down in the form of an attack. And let's go ahead and get rid of that now. Let's go ahead and knock that out as a part of this video, because once we get to 27, it's going to be a while. So let's do 26 as well. By, with, because of, from, in, on, around 15 days, so in 15 days, thereabouts, around, in which, again, it has been come. Do you see the it of ventum? Into the winter camp, so that she's getting settled about a half a month in. The initium, the beginning of a sudden uproar. and of a rebellion arose. Ortimes comes from orior, oriri, ortis, soon to rise. It arose, did the beginning of this rebellion and of this hubbub from Ambiorix and Catavolcus. Remember we were talking about them earlier, the Eburones people, who, when, since, or although they had been at the ready, they had waited upon. This expression, praestofuisse, means to act as a personal concierge almost. So when, since, or although they had waited upon Sabina and Cata, it takes a dative, why Sabina and Catai are dative, at the borders of their own kingdom, and had brought in grain into the winter camps. So these two guys who had been essentially the liaison for Sabinus and Cata and their camp, and had been the ones bringing in that grain, these guys, the Qui, Ambiorix and Catavolcus, having been struck, having been impelled by the messengers of Indutiamaris, the Treverin, having been kind of like, really? Really? What's going on? A rebellion is starting? They jump in the mix. They incited, concitaverunt, instead of a con, put an X on the front. You get the word excited. They excited up their own guys. This is Ambiorix and Catavolcus doing it. And with the woodcutters, having been overwhelmed, opprima, oppressi, oppressus, suddenly, and why would the woodcutters be the first ones to get got? They're on the outside of the walls. They're the ones cutting the wood for the walls. They came to the camps ad castra with a large band. Remember that manu means hand, but in the context here, it can also mean like a band of individuals. And then you have the supine of purpose. They came for the purpose of attacking, to attack. And when our guys quickly captured, grabbed their weapons, and had climbed, so when our guys had captured their weapons quickly and had climbed the wall, and with the Spanish cavalry, having been sent out from one part in an equestrian battle, equestri prolio, ablative case, they had been victorious. They had been superior. So it's the cavalry that wins the day. And with the situation having been despaired, the enemies know that they have lost. With the situation having been despaired, the enemies led their own guys away from the attack. So they tried to catch them in a sneaky way. They did kill those woodcutters, but the Romans had the advantage due to the fact that they had within the camps that Spanish cavalry. And so they were not able to overtake the camps in the way that they had hoped. I'm sure Ambiorix and Catavolcus. And so then, because of from, men on at their own custom. Remember that more comes from. Mos, Morris. So we get morals and mores. They shouted that somebody out of our guys should, would, could, might, whatever you would like. Let's go with should. Should come forward, ire, to go, pro, forward. Ad colloquium, for the purpose of a conversation, for the purpose of talking. A colloquium is conversation. So they want to negotiate. They shouted that, and they have an accusative subject, that they themselves did have something which they wanted, volo, vele. That's the infinitive, to want, with an ending. So it is an imperfect subjunctive. That they had something which they wanted to say about the common situation. By, with, because of, from, in, on, at which situations they hoped that the disagreements, controversies, but it really is disagreements, were able to be diminished. So they want to talk it out and they want to work out their differences and their problems. This is a parley, essentially, in which a negotiation in good faith on both sides after the failed attack upon the Roman camps. And we'll start with chapter 27 in the next video. It is a doozy of a chapter. So pay close attention, study your words, know your vocab. Good luck.